Agree, where we're talking about the latest in trends, technologies, and innovations happening across the media and healthcare spaces. This might be your first time watching, so welcome. Hopefully you're coming back. Today, we are going to France and New York. Just kidding. But if you, like me, had to stay back for the Upfronts, Newfronts, and Cannes, no worries. We're here to give you the highlights. So we're here today with Toby Katcher and Bianca Blando Kroupa, who were lucky enough to be in New York this year for the Upfronts and Newfronts. So Toby, tell us, what was unique about the Upfronts and Newfronts this year, and what did you see theme-wise?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the upfronts have been going on for quite some time. Traditionally it's been a seller's marketplace, but I think we're going to see a very heavily buyer-driven marketplace this year. We see continued evolution of how buyers are accessing inventory and reaching their desired audiences. So, I think we're going to see a continued shift to digital video. It's no secret that consumer viewership is shifting in that way for more traditional media channels. And we continue to see that time spent with digital video, including CTV and OTT devices, continuing to outsurpass traditional TV. And that continued growth is going to continue on that path. We've seen over the last few years that linear TV and OTT are going to continue to move in singular marketplace with a push towards more programmatic buying this year. Publishers are continuing to release more of their inventory into that programmatic space, but continue to maintain some of their more premium offerings that can only be accessed directly. The measurement space continues to heat up. Alternative currencies continue to grow, become more commonly used. Nielsen continues to feel the pressure from companies like VideoAmp and iSpot as advertisers are seeking those alternative measurement and currency solutions. But I really think the key things to this year's upfronts are going to be flexibility. So increased flexibility. Options are going to play a significant role. Advertisers are going to want that greater flexibility, more optionable dollars, shorter cancellation windows, and even later order dates. And then really, again, with that flexibility, also, more flexibility with their media dollars, how they're preferring to place those dollars, more so in the scatter marketplace, closer to execution, planning for the uncertainties of a looming recession, as well as any kind of risks in terms of inventory or pricing constraints.
I think Toby brings up a great point around just those dollars aren't infinite, right? So we're always working within the space of a limited investment. All of our clients have ROI goals they're trying to meet, and unfortunately they have limited budgets. So we really are seeing that CTV and social channels can come in as that shift occurs from linear. And a lot of times our clients can see great efficiency there. They really can become more targeted. They can see those dollars used more efficiently. There's a lot less waste when you're taking less of that big stroke. And so that's why a lot of clients are starting to make the shift over from such a heavy TV investment, on the traditional side to more CTV and social to support that.
Adding to that, fluidity in its various forms is going to be a real hot topic this year for the upfront season. And it's going to be crucial for buyers and sellers alike to embrace, how we embark into this next buying season, particularly if both want to avoid a more drawn out upfront.
That's great insight, Toby and Bianca. Thanks. So Bianca, talk to us more about how these channels are filling the gaps and how we're seeing social in particular doing what we said TV never could.
Definitely. So I think that social goes above and beyond what traditional TV media could do. One of the main topics of the Newfronts this year was AR. And that's something that really we could never create the connections in traditional TV that we can now with our users on social. One of the examples that was given at Meta was an ad that was an AR ad when the new Tiffany store opened, the flagship store on Fifth Avenue. And you could actually walk down the street to the new store and go inside. And that may not sound like it's relevant to pharma, but it absolutely can be if we put on our creative hats. So think about a disease state where we know that our patients are super reluctant to walk into that doctor's office and get their diagnosis and start on treatment. But they could actually walk through that appointment virtually in advance through a social ad. And it really can bring them the comfort that they need to go ahead and make that appointment. So I think AR is just one place where we're seeing social expand on what we could have done previously with those dollars.
I love that relevancy and I love that example. Thank you. And so my next question for you both is, where are we seeing different generational differences and nuances, and how this sort of having an implication across the channels?
From a video and streaming perspective, it's no, it's not hidden that it was originally younger demographics that adapted to the streaming tactic of watching video, but it certainly has caught up across all generations. And now we're seeing the older generations that were more, comfortable in that traditional linear format heavily adopting to the streaming environment and incrementally watching video even more so above and beyond what they do from a traditional linear perspective. So there's been significant growth, within the older generations within the streaming space. And, we've certainly hit a tipping point of mass adoption across all generations.
Yeah, and I think that the trend is very similar on paid social. Every channel is seeing that 35 and up, 45 and up age group being the fastest growing. But some of the channels that might surprise you that are seeing that are Snapchat and TikTok, not just the Metas and the Pinterest that you would think that generation would traditionally align with. So across the board, we're seeing that adoption of digital, that adoption of really today's marketing mediums across the gamut. So we want our clients to bear that in mind, that just because you have an older demographic, you have an older patient base, that doesn't mean that these channels aren't for you and that you shouldn't be considering them just as much in your mix.
Got it. Super interesting, important for our pharma marketers to pay attention to. Toby, can you share with us where we're seeing growth driven by fast channels?
Yeah, absolutely. So this year's Newfronts and Upfronts, there was certainly a lot of talk highlighting the growth of fast channels and the adoption. And, fast channels, for those not familiar, are free ad-supported television, and they run very similar to that traditional cable experience that most of us have, grown to be familiar with, in life. But there's been, with the cord cutting phenomenon and that familiarity to the traditional cable lines, we've seen a lot of growth from a content perspective with dedicated channels devoted to some of linear TV's greatest hits. The likelihood Conan O'Brien launched his own fast channel this year. So there's been a lot of growth in content that's been significantly supporting a lot of that continued growth viewership, as well as that adaptation to, that combination of the comfortability of the linear TV environment, but that more on-demand streaming content. So it's also a lot of content exploration, but also, that ability to find your true and tried legacy programming that you grew to love as a child, as a viewer.
Is that common, Toby, for it to be like an influencer, someone who we see in the public sphere, to be the person who produces that type of channel, or was that pretty unique that Conan did that?
I think it's unique in the sense, but we have seen a lot more growth of that. I think when fast channels launched, they were much more on like a program level. So, from a home and garden type affinity or a sports affinity. Now we're seeing it more on that personality level, people who have, a curated legacy of programming and segments that they can take advantage of with their intellectual, with their IPs, and further broaden out some of the content that may not have actually made it to air in the more traditional linear days.
I just find it super interesting because one of the other big trends that we saw on the social side was influencers, and a lot of the platforms coming out with their own marketplaces to find an influencer who produces this content. So it's really interesting that we're still seeing that rise of people want the transparency that comes with seeing content from someone they know and someone they trust. And even as there's a shift in the space, those people are still coming through and being like such major players.
Yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see one of the influencers maybe launch their own channel within a fast channel as they continue to grow from a subscribership level. This would be a way to grow their audiences, have their content further expanded upon, and reach net new viewers. It's clear we're upon another year of change with this upfront season. And flexibility and fluidity are going to be key for all of our advertisers. So make sure that you're engaging with your teams.
Thank you both. These insights are incredible. You represented us great at New York, and now our pharma marketers have what they need to know moving forward into the year. Now, I absolutely cannot wait to introduce you to the team who is back from Cannes. Oleg Korenfeld, Amy Litt, Cliff Covey, and Mark Pappas, who represented CMI Media Group recently in the south of France and are bringing back all of the hot takes for you. So we're going to kind of do this very round robin style. There's so much to cover from Cannes, as always, the creativity, the innovation, the fresh ideas, and the takeaways from the many sessions and discussions that this group had. Amy, what was the top highlight for you when you were there?
Yeah, I was incredibly privileged and honored to be able to speak twice on two topics that are really, really important to me, both personally and professionally, on a platform. I mean, literally platforms as big as Cannes. It was really phenomenal. On Monday morning, I presented with Cassandra Sinclair from Gray Health, research that had been done between our two agencies, presenting basically the historical, current, and future state of health inequity, specifically for women. And it was excellent research done by all of our agencies and a really remarkable opportunity to present the fact that there's still so much to be done. There's a tremendous amount of hope in healthcare right now for what we as marketers can do to change the health outcomes for women. But the situation now is really still pretty dire. And we've launched with a couple of facts that really, I think, knock people's socks off. The fact that 1 in 10 women in the workforce who's experiencing menopause has to leave their job because their symptoms are so severe and that their healthcare needs cannot be accommodated, which of course has an amazing impact on both the talent pool of agencies like ours, but also the economic, housing, job, education stability of the families that they support. The UN says that women reinvest 90% of their assets and income into their communities and families. So when women do not have good health and autonomy over their health, and also very importantly, education to make the best decisions about their health, it doesn't just impact us as individuals, but has the power to either take down or raise up significant social issues over the course of generations.
I was so proud to see that come to life. Nicely done, Amy. And another session you contributed to was the incredibly effective campaign with Grindr and the director of affairs for the LGBTQ community from Atlanta, Georgia. I'd love to hear more about that.
So Andy Kraut from Grindr, Director of Partnerships, and Malik Brown, who's Director of LGBTQ plus Affairs for the City of Atlanta Mayor's Office, joined me to present a case study on truly one of the most effective public health education campaigns in recent history. We kicked off that session with what I called the 2-minute Bummer book report on the history of AIDS to set the stage for how poorly things can go when institutions do not want to talk to certain groups, when they are afraid to take on difficult issues, and when internalized stigma and externalized stigma overrules the need to provide people with the healthcare that they deserve as a human right. So we know what did not go well throughout the 80s and 90s, and then countering that with what happened with Mpox last year, where not only did the CDC and the White House take on the real channels of communication among the group that was most impacted by Mpox, which of course was men who have sex with men. It is a sexually transmitted disease. Being able to put information out there that this group could trust, understand, using very explicit terms, and then the office of the mayor in Atlanta being able to spin off of that and go, okay, what do we do? If that's the precedent that's being set and the CDC is being this bold, what can we do? And that yielded the partnership between the mayor's office and Grindr to put the right information in front of the right people at the right time, but most importantly, in the right place. There's so much historic distrust from marginalized communities, and specifically in the context for men who have sex with men and the queer community at large, specifically when it comes to government communication. Going on Grindr was really the best possible method to get this life-saving information about transmission and vaccinations for Mpox to the group that needed it. And we presented that case study to say not just DE&I is important, it's important to reach out to these groups. You should be doing this, but to say when you do it, it can work and it can create significant impact on public health and health outcomes, save lives. And of course, that's also applicable beyond health to any large organization that wants to reach a marginalized group and comes down to the individuals. That's really what the point of the panel was. Comes down to the individuals being willing to have those really difficult conversations about topics that they think are taboo. like gay sex. And not only that, but because we're in Cannes, we're talking to significant leaders in the field saying it's not just up to an individual to go to their boss and have that difficult conversation about where to be and why and when, but as a leader, it's your responsibility to create an environment where those conversations can happen. And we called that guy Richard. Said, don't be a Richard. Was really the takeaway from our panel. Is
that's awesome.
We all know who that guy is at work, and don't be that guy. Be the person who is willing to facilitate those difficult, challenging conversations, take on taboo topics, because the outcomes are dire in a lot of cases.
Incredible, Amy. Thank you so much. And thanks for punctuating, I think, in addition to the moral aspect of this, the important business impact that it has too. Huge congrats to you, truly. We're going to bounce over to Oleg now. I'd love to hear you tell us about the 3 A's of advertising and your experience at Cannes.
The panel that I was on, the 3 A's that you wanted to focus on was artificial intelligence, addressability, and attention to advertising. Predictably, 90% of discussion was about artificial intelligence. And if you really think about what this Cannes was about, you could not escape AI anywhere. But it is important to also point out that there were a lot of very important topics to discuss outside of AI. So when it comes to AI, I think there's more questions than answers right now. And the approach that I liked the best on the panel that I was on, and also in the conversations during the week, is what is practical? What can be done today? Where can we leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to help with processes that we have to deal with as agencies today? So a lot of the discussion was about that. But we should not forget about the other 2 A's in that panel, which is addressability first, which is an important topic to discuss, considering that the final browser is dropping their third-party cookies next year, and how will that affect us understanding the consumer moving forward? We're a digital agency first, and we need to understand what is the best way to reach a consumer in a post-third-party cookie world. Because if we don't have a new way to identify the consumer, we probably will have issues with reach of our messaging. So that was the piece to discuss. And I think there's a lot of great opportunities to consider there that are not just one silver bullet will solve for everything, but trying and spending next year, because we are on the clock right now. Google basically put everybody on the clock. And we have about a year to kind of figure out what are the alternatives to the current state of affairs and how do we test it now so we're ready to go once everything is turned off completely.
What happens in that year time frame? Like, what should our clients be thinking about? What's the year?
Well, the year goal right now is to try alternatives. I believe we have about a year, a little less, to really understand what are the alternatives, how scalable they are, and how well they integrate with everything else that you're doing today. The other very important piece to think about, and Cliff actually gave me this thought, which is, I think, very valuable. It's not going to be apples to apples comparison. It's not going to be about just saying, well, I've been doing this third-party cookie thing for the last 20 plus years. I should expect the same results. Absolutely not. So what do we do today and in the next 12 months to really understand what is the new benchmark? So that's definitely something our clients should be thinking about. It's something we're thinking about, and something we will be doing over the next year, really trying alternatives, measuring them against what we've been expecting over the last couple of decades. And how do we basically level set the new way of thinking about reach and frequency understanding of our consumer? And the last piece, I don't know, Cliff.
I was just going to reiterate what you said. I think it's important that we not scramble a year from now to understand what the impact is going to be, and that we understand the impact today and we set those expectations. To your point, everything is not going to be the same. Our audience quality is not going to be the same. Our reach is not going to be the same, and our frequency is not going to be the same. So it's important, whether it's better or worse, that we're setting those expectations today and we understand what that impact is going to be. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think it's a great point.
Absolutely. And the last piece is attention, and attention to media. And I think this is also very important depending on which channel we are talking about, right? So omni-channel is not only a buzzword. This is the way we think about communication to the end consumer, whether the end consumer is a physician or a patient. And when you think about what is the true attention, how do you measure the attention of that consumer to your message, it's really important to understand what environment you're in and how do you measure that. Attention measurement in CTV versus attention measurement in mobile versus attention measurement in email is very very different things. And the concept of kind of how do you measure lean in experience when somebody is actually leaning in and engaging with a message versus kind of leaning back and waiting for the ad to pass and just move on to the content they were waiting for in the first place is important to consider when you're thinking about attention. And again, for us, when we think about omnichannel strategies and when we're thinking about kind of the creative that is used once the decision is made about which path to take, what is that personal identifiable, kind of not even personal identifiable, but what is that precise message and dynamic creative that can be personalized to that message that could be delivered.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Oleg. All right. And Cliff was on a panel with partner Video Amp talking about the emergence of CTV. Hi, Cliff. How was Cannes?
It was fantastic. It was a truly amazing and productive experience. And yes, I did have the opportunity to take part in a seaside chat with a great partner in Video Amp, where we really discussed the emergence of CTV in the healthcare space, really focusing in on creating better patient outcomes and creating more meaningful engagements with our audience, whether it be patients or healthcare professionals. We talked a good bit about how in the DTC space, I think we're much more evolved and it's a core channel for reaching and engaging patients. But what we've seen over the past few years is a true evolution in the HCP space that was largely fueled by COVID and really allowed us to take part in CTV and reach HCPs in this channel. As reps began to receive less access to HCPs, we turned to digital channels to really create these more meaningful engagements with our audience, and CTV was a perfect channel to do so. So we talked a lot about how we've seen the HCP CTV space really explode over the past few years and the real impact of that on our campaigns. We've seen tremendous ROI across the board, and I think it's something that all of our clients should be thinking about, whether it's a huge brand with a TV spot or it's a smaller brand that doesn't necessarily have video creative. We really need to think about this space and develop creative to make sure we're taking part in it. We also discussed the evolution and where we're going in the CTV space, both from a DTC and HCP perspective. On the DTC side, it's really about better measurement, making sure that we're understanding who we're reaching, where we're reaching them, the duplicated reach, the unduplicated reach, and really what suppliers, what inventory, what channels are providing the most valuable reach to our audience, and really working with the best partners from a measurement perspective to truly understand that. On the HCP side, it's a similar story, but it's more specific to things like physician level data, right? So physician level data has long been a challenge in the CTV space. So making sure that we're working with our suppliers, with our data partners to make sure we understand what HCP households are seeing our ads we're making sure that hopefully it's the HCP in front of the TV seeing our ads, and that we're optimizing our campaigns to really reach our audience in this incredibly powerful channel at the right time with the right message. And it was overall just a great conversation and obviously a very beautiful setting. But I do think that CTV continues to be a core channel that the pharma space and the healthcare space in general needs to concentrate on, whether we're thinking about the DTC audiences that have long been kind of focused in this area, but also really kind of diving in headfirst on the HCP side of things.
I would like to also add, when you think about CTV specifically and the beauty of it being more of a digital platform, so the opportunities to target and to measure are so great, but also need to be juxtaposed to what's happening to linear television. And when you think about, as a marketer, healthcare marketer, you think about where to invest. Linear TV is shrinking, so you need to be able to really understand the new channels and how to take the best advantage of it.
Even in the linear space too, when we can get to addressable suppliers, right, where we're really getting into live cable TV at a one-to-one level. It's a really amazing capability that we could do either from a DTC or now an HCP perspective, right? We can really reach really finite audiences in live TV. And so I do think, Oleg, to your point, the old way of, especially in the healthcare space, of buying linear TV is changing, and it's going to have to change to really make sure we're reaching our audience.
Thank you both. Great recap. Thank you. All right, Mark, welcome back from Cannes. Tell us all about it. What was the best part?
Yet again, just as amazing as last year, if not more so. Last year was my first time there, and I quickly realized that, everybody hears about some of the goings on there, but it's honestly the single most productive conference that I think that we attend as an agency every year. There's two big parts to Con, where there's like the actual award side, but then there's the more of like the ad tech panel side, meeting side, which is kind of like where my focus has primarily been. Oleg last year, and then with all of us kind of tag teaming meetings this year, and just meeting with everyone from companies that we currently work with now to companies we've never heard of. And then my favorite part about being there is these random encounters that happen where, like Oleg and I were at a lunch, and we ended up meeting someone who was CEO of a company that provides like 95% of the world's like mobile ad inventory, that company we never even heard of. And then next thing you know, the next guy I talked to led covert operations at the CIA for 25 years. And it's like, where do you get that mix of people in the same room, just having these very spontaneous conversations? But the actual meetings that are facilitated by, our friends over at MediaLink are amazingly efficient, where we can meet with a lot of these different companies back to back to back. And we're meeting with people that are so senior at the company that it's much easier for us to really facilitate change and actually have things being created for us, so we can roll into, our suite of tools that Oleg and team are working on here. We met with countless CEOs from some of our partners who we don't usually get the chance to meet with. So that was great that we were able to connect with all of them, give feedback, provide recommendations on new product updates coming, and, ask for things that, we need to really make our job that much better. On top of that, I got to speak on a panel on the Over Yacht, discussing some of the things that Oleg just mentioned around, cookie depreciation and the shift to attention metrics from vanity metrics. Sustainability is one of those other big areas of Cannes that was huge last year, and it was dwarfed this year, I think, by AI. But some of the subjects and the topics of our panel that really made you think were the way that current vanity metrics are is not really sustainable, because a lot of these sites that are kind of built for advertising are not efficient, but they just filled with ads, and they serve a need. They can provide inventory, but a lot of it's not the greatest. So by being able to switch to a lot of these attention metrics, it's not just providing better insights of people actually interacting with the ad units, it's actually leading to a more sustainable ad tech industry overall, which is extremely important. AI, Oleg touched on AI. That was obviously everywhere. We couldn't get away from it. Every single session, panel, meeting we went to had some form of AI. At the Group M rooftop, Steve Keller ran through this project that we've been working on for the past month or so, where we pitted 3 teams. We gave them a fake Alzheimer's brand that we created. We put together a media brief, creative brief, and they basically pitched to me as if I was the client, a full media plan, creative campaign. And one of the teams was all AI. One was a hybrid of human and AI, and one was just purely human. And so we shared a lot of the results and some of the behind the scenes stuff that went into this. And we're looking to continue to roll this out and provide more detail around the outcomes from it. But it was definitely eye-opening and surprising, somewhat terrifying, but it's just showing. I think the one thing that we all learn is that, obviously AI is here. It's going to affect everything that we do, but you still need that human element. AI is a tool, and we need to make sure that we're leveraging these tools properly, and we have the human input. And I joked with Oleg in the other recap video we did for CMI, where I can see us hiring for prompt engineers or something like that in the very near future. So that's something I definitely see coming. But overall, again, this is probably hands down the single most productive conference of the year. It's just the connections that are there are amazing, and these encounters cannot be replicated anywhere else.
The one thing that I would just add on to this AI point, because of how big it was to this conversation, not just in Cannes, but before and afterwards, I truly believe now that there's an element of human intelligence that needs to be in the beginning of any AI conversation. And the innovation will still come from that human intelligence. The iteration of that innovation can and should be driven by machine learned technologies. And this is where AI can help us. So when it comes to opportunities versus fear mongering of what potentially it could do, I think for our industry, there's great opportunities there, as long as we understand realistically what needs to be done up front, and what kind of skill sets and experiences we need to have to make sure that AI works for us.
And Oleg, if I can add on to that, something that came up in, I guess, my perspective on Cannes was the importance of the diversity of drivers and perspectives that are being fed into AI. I mean, as Marcus said, garbage in, garbage out. And so there is an important consideration when it comes to who is creating these prompts, who is asking these questions, and what problems is AI being set to solve. Because we may end up, worst case scenario, something incredibly homogenous, same people using the same information, same outputs, or can be using AI to capture an incredible diversity of perspectives and power, greater versioning, more innovation, expanding upon what we already have to create better, more specific solutions.
And what's great about a lot of the, these partners that are leveraging AI is like this stuff is real and it's here and we can capitalize on it now. I mean, Cliff already joined me on a follow-up call where we met with a partner who's leveraging AI in the programmatic space. So it's something that we're able to implement for clients today. It's not something that's, like a year or two off. Like this is here now and we're able to start to leverage this. So there's going to be a lot more in the AI front and a lot more follow-ups coming out of Cannes, but there's going to be a ton of stuff that we're going to be able to leverage for our clients very, very soon.
Yeah, I think, Mark, in addition to that, just outside of even AI, just something I found incredibly valuable about the experience was all of just the chance networking and chance encounters that we had. We had obviously set up meetings that led to great brainstorming and good follow-ups with both partners that we work with, but also partners that we may not work with and may not have as much experience with in the healthcare space. But I met so many people just at random panels, at random events that I would not have necessarily been connected to otherwise. And whether it be AI, whether it be cookieless, whether it be media channels or ad formats or even measurement, I made a lot of great connections that were already having meetings talking about how, what challenges are we having from a healthcare business perspective, and how can some of these solutions that may not be focused in the healthcare space help support us? And as Mark said, we've already had a number of follow-ups, and I'm incredibly excited to see where a lot of those conversations go.
All right, and that, folks, is how Cannes is done. Cannes, however you pronounce it. Huge opportunity, huge takeaways for our clients, and we're happy to bring them to you. We'll see you next time on The Nth Degree.